The Great Domestication, A Forensic Autopsy of the Human Spirit 1925-2025. By John Zerga Jr. Turn off the television, put down the smartphone, stop letting the algorithms tickle your dopamine receptors for 5 minutes. We need to have a conversation, and it's not going to be the polite, sanitized drivel you get from the phonies on the nightly news or the pretenders in HR who talk about synergy while they plan your layoff. We are standing at a crime scene. The yellow tape is up, flapping in the wind. The victim on the pavement is Western civilization, specifically, the independent human spirit. The cause of death, a lethal cocktail of apathy, convenience, and a slow-acting poison I call the great comfort. I'm a utilitarian. I deal in what works. I deal in the math of reality. And the math is screaming that for the last 100 years, from 1925 to 2025, we haven't just changed. We have been domesticated. We have been bred down from wolves to poodles, clipped and groomed to sit nicely in the lap of a corporate state that despises us. We are going to use reason. We are going to use logic. We are going to strip the paint off this rotting house and look at the termites in the foundation. We will draw from the ancients, the street scholars, and yes, the forbidden library of the conspiracy realists, David Icke, Jim Marrs, Daniel Estulin, to understand how we got here. The handshake versus the digital nod, the collapse of ritual and acknowledgement. Let's rewind the tape to 1925. A man walks down the street in Chicago, London, or New York. He sees a neighbor. He stops. He adjusts his hat. He extends a hand. Do you understand the physics of the handshake? It is not just grabbing meat. It is an ancient, biological contract. By exposing the open palm, you signal, I hold no weapon. I surrender my capacity for immediate violence in exchange for mutual respect. It was a ritual that acknowledged the sovereignty of the other person. Two souls, created in the image of God, acknowledging they share a reality. It was a micro-covenant. Now, look at 2025. You walk down the street, and what do you see? The Walking Dead, heads bent at a 45-degree angle, worshipping the black mirror in their palms. White plugs in ears, a universal, do not disturb, sign hanging on the soul. If you say, good morning, people recoil like you're trying to serve them a subpoena. We have replaced the etiquette of acknowledgement with the urban scowl. We have lost what sociologist Ray Oldenburg called the third place, the pub, the barbershop, the church stoop. These were the parliaments of the people. They were where norms were enforced, not by police, but by shame and honor. If you acted like a jerk in the barbershop in 1925, the community corrected you. Today, our public square is a digital server farm owned by a billionaire in Silicon Valley who harvests your data like a farmer harvests corn. The philosophical angle. Confucius talked about ritual propriety. He argued that without these small rituals, the social fabric dissolves. When we stop bowing, shaking hands, or dressing up, we stop respecting the roles we play. We become atomized units of consumption. The social contract Rousseau talked about has been replaced by an end-user license agreement that nobody reads but everyone signs, signing away their privacy for the convenience of an app. The street angle. In the neighborhood, if you didn't look a man in the eye, you were hiding something. Today, everyone is hiding everything. We have replaced the covenant of presence with the contract of convenience. And in doing so, we have become ghosts in our own cities. 2. The corporate plantation. From vocation to human resource. I am a capitalist, a true capitalist. I believe in the free market, competition, and the best idea winning. But what we have today is not capitalism. It is techno-feudalism. It is a rigged casino where the house doesn't just win, the house owns the regulators, the politicians, and the media telling you gambling is good for your health. In the 1920s, a job was often a vocation. A man built a table. He selected the wood, he planed it, he joined it. That table was a testament to his skill, his honor. He had a duty to the material. Even in the factories, there was a sense of collective struggle and dignity. Enter the era of planned obsolescence and the corporatocracy. As authors like David Icke and Jim Marrs have tirelessly pointed out, the global power structure has shifted from overt governance to covert economic control. The corporation is the new feudal lord. They don't need to own the land if they own the debt. In 1925, Henry Ford paid his workers enough to buy the cars they built. It wasn't charity, it was smart business market equilibrium. Today, the CEO makes 400 times what the worker makes, and the worker is on food stamps. This is the definition of penny wise, pound foolish. The corporations squeeze the worker to boost the quarterly stock price, destroying the very consumer base they need to survive in the long run. We have shifted from producers to human resources. Think about that term, resource, like coal, like lumber, something to be burned up and discarded. The modern workplace is a psychological Skinner box designed to extract maximum productivity for minimum wage, all while gaslighting you with phrases like, "we're a family here." Manly P. Hall, the great esoteric scholar, warned us about this. He taught that when you cut a society off from its spiritual roots, from the secret teachings of beauty, divine proportion, and natural law, you get a soulless husk. We are building prisons for the mind and calling them open concept offices. We have removed the walls not to foster collaboration, but to foster surveillance, the panopticon. And let's look at the dress code. In 1925, a man wore a suit to a baseball game. Why? Respect. Respect for the occasion, respect for the public, respect for himself. Today, we wear pajamas to the airport. We have casual Fridays that turned into slob everydays. This isn't freedom, it's a lack of discipline. As the Stoics knew, discipline is the only true freedom. If you cannot command your own appearance, you cannot command your own mind. 3. The mating market. The Tinder swindler economy. If you want to see where the wide path has truly led us into the abyss, look at how we mate. Or rather, how we consume each other. 100 years ago, courtship was a vetting process for the most important merger of your life, the family. Marriage wasn't just about being happy, it was about survival, legacy, and duty. It was a fortress against the chaos of the world. Families were involved, communities were involved, there were stakes. Today, dating is a supply chain issue. It has been gamified. The stat: in 2025, over 50% of couples meet online. We browse humans like we browse toaster ovens on Amazon. Too short, too poor, wrong hair color, swipe left. The result? The paradox of choice. When you think you have infinite options, you value none of them. It's like walking into a massive buffet. You fill your plate with garbage you don't even want, just because it's there, and you leave feeling sick and empty. We have replaced "till death do us part" with "till I get bored or find an upgrade." This is where the insights of Lawrence Gardner on bloodlines become metaphorically relevant. In the past, the bloodline was everything: legacy, honor, continuity. Now, we act as if we are genetic dead ends. We have severed the link between the ancestors and the descendants. We are living in the eternal now of consumerism, where history doesn't matter and the future is someone else's problem. We have a generation of men who are terrified of women, and women who despise men, all orchestrated by a cultural narrative that pits the sexes against each other in a gladiatorial arena of victimhood. This is classic divide and conquer. If men and women are fighting each other, they aren't fighting the corruption in the system. In The Godfather, the Don says, "A man who doesn't spend time with his family can never be a real man." He wasn't talking about sitting in the same room while scrolling through TikTok. He was talking about presence. He was talking about being the anchor in the storm. Today, the storm is inside the house, and the anchor is made of styrofoam. IV. The architecture of control, the hidden hand in the long game. Now, we have to go deep. We have to look at why this happened. It wasn't an accident. It wasn't just technology. You don't go from the greatest generation to a generation that eats Tide Pods by accident. You read Daniel Estulin on the Bilderberg Group, or Mark Dice on the Illuminati and media manipulation, and a pattern emerges. The shift in social norms wasn't organic, it was engineered. The method: problem, reaction, solution. David Icke explains this perfectly. The problem: the elites create a crisis, e.g., economic instability, social tension, a virus. The reaction: the public, terrified, screams, "Do something. Save us." The solution: the elites offer the solution they planned all along: less privacy, more control, digital ID, centralization. Look at the norms of safety. In 1925, risk was a part of life. Kids played outside without supervision. You drank from the hose. You got into fistfights and shook hands afterward. In 2025, we are obsessed with safetyism. We have zero-tolerance policies. We have safe spaces. We have trigger warnings. Why? Because a population that is terrified of risk is a population that is easy to rule. If you can make people afraid of the air, afraid of their neighbors, afraid of words, you own them. Jordan Maxwell spent his life exposing how symbols and words control us. Look at the word, government. Gouverner, to control, plus men's mind. Mind control. The social norms of 2025 are designed to keep the mind in a state of reactive infancy. We are living in the matrix that William Bramley hinted at in The Gods of Eden. Bramley argued that war and social chaos are not human nature, but mechanisms used by custodial forces to keep humanity divided and manageable. Whether you believe in actual extraterrestrial manipulation, like Zecharia Sitchin or Eric von Daniken, or just the custodial nature of the globalist elite, the result is the same. Humanity is a livestock species, kept healthy enough to work but too stupid to rebel. The wide path is the path of the sheep. The sheep feels safe in the herd, but the sheep inevitably ends up as lamb chops. V. The biological downgrade. The poison temple. You cannot separate the mind from the body. Professor Walter Veith has argued extensively on the connection between diet, health, and spiritual clarity. In 1925, food was food. It rotted if you left it out. In 2025, food is a science experiment. It's edible food-like substances, packed with seed oils, high fructose corn syrup, red dye number 40, and preservatives. Why does this matter for social norms? Because a physically sick population is a socially weak population. You cannot have a warrior ethos or a Bushido code when your testosterone is tanking, your gut biome is destroyed, and your brain is inflamed by processed sugar. We have normalized lethargy. We have normalized obesity. We have normalized the idea that health comes from a pill bottle rather than discipline. The pharmaceutical companies, the biggest monopolies of all, don't want cures, they want customers. This connects to the ancient astronaut theories again. If Sitchin was right and we were engineered as a worker race, then the modern diet is the perfect worker fuel, just enough energy to operate the machine, but not enough vitality to overthrow the master. We are voluntarily handing over our autonomy to the gods of Silicon Valley. We are wiring our brains into the cloud, the new Akasha. We are becoming the Borg. V. The death of duty and the rise of the victim. Here is the philosophical core of the rot. We have shifted from a culture of duty deontology to a culture of rights hedonism. 1925. What do I owe my family? What do I owe my God? What do I owe my nation? The Stoic Christian view. 2025. What do I get? Where is my stimulus check? Why is the world so mean to me? The narcissist consumer view. This is the wide path Jesus warned us about. It is the path of least resistance. It is easy to be a victim. It is easy to blame the system. It is hard to look in the mirror and say, I am the problem. We have raised a generation that treats trauma as a currency. They wear their mental illnesses like Girl Scout badges. I have anxiety, therefore I am exempt from the basic requirements of adulthood. It's pathetic. It's soft. Kant's categorical imperative asks, act only according to that maxim whereby you can at the same time will that it should become a universal law. If everyone acted like the modern consumer, taking everything, giving nothing, canceling anyone who disagrees, ghosting their friends, the human race would be extinct by Tuesday. We have lost the concept of honor. In 1925, if a man gave his word, it was bond. If he broke it, he was socially dead. Today, lying is just PR. Politicians lie, CEOs lie, journalists lie, and we accept it because we have become cynical. 7. The education system, the factory of conformity. We must touch on education. In the early 20th century, there was still a remnant of classical education, teaching people how to think. Logic, rhetoric, grammar. Then came the Prussian model, adopted by the West. The goal wasn't to create philosophers, it was to create obedient soldiers and factory workers. In 2025, the university system is a joke. It's a hedge fund with a football team. They charge students $100,000 to get a degree in grievance studies, saddling them with debt indentured servitude before they even start life. Joseph P. Farrell has written about the Nazi International and the infiltration of technology and ideology into the West. Look at our universities. They don't tolerate dissent. They demand ideological conformity. That isn't education, it's indoctrination. It's the architecture of control applied to the neurons of the youth. 8. The Zerga synthesis, the way of the street scholar. So, we have analyzed the crime scene. The body is cold, the verdict is clear, it was a suicide, assisted by the phonies in charge. But I am a Christian, which means I believe in resurrection. I believe that the truth is a lion, you don't have to defend it, you just have to let it out of the cage. How do we live in this brave new world? How do we navigate the wide path without getting trampled? We must adopt the Zerga protocol. 1. The OODA loop of the soul. Observe, orient, decide, act. Most people are stuck in react. They see a headline, they get angry. They see an ad, they buy. You must be a detective. When the media tells you to hate someone, ask, why? When the corporation tells you to buy something, ask, cui bono? Who benefits? Read Mark Dice. Read Joseph P. Farrell. Understand the technology of control so you can hack it. Don't be a conspiracy theorist, be a conspiracy analyst. 2. The Stoic Fortress. You cannot control the Great Reset. You cannot control the Federal Reserve. You can control your own mind. Marcus Aurelius said, the object of life is not to be on the side of the majority, but to escape finding oneself in the ranks of the insane. Build a fortress of habits. Read physical books, they can't delete those remotely. Turn off the Wi-Fi. Learn a trade. Be a producer in a world of consumers. 3. The humor of the absurd. You have to laugh. If you don't laugh, you'll go crazy. When you see a bureaucrat enforcing a rule that makes no sense, don't scream. Laugh. It's a Monty Python sketch. It's Brazil. It's idiocracy. Use the satire of George Carlin. Mock the pretenders. Ridicule the phonies. Humor is the kryptonite of tyrants. They cannot stand being laughed at because their power relies on you taking them seriously. 4. The memento mori. Modern society is terrified of death. That's why we have transhumanism. That's why we have the denial of aging. But as Thomas Horn wrote about the blending of iron and clay, the attempt to merge man with machine to escape death is an abomination. It is the Tower of Babel all over again. Accept your mortality. It makes the coffee taste better. It makes the handshake firmer. It makes the truth sharper. Death is the seasoning that gives life its flavor. 5. The narrow path. The majority is usually wrong. History proves this. The majority shouted, "Crucify him." The majority bought the pet rock. The majority thought the housing market could never crash. Do not be afraid to walk alone. The narrow path is steep. It is rocky. There are no guardrails, but it is the only path that leads to the summit. Ix. The cinema of collapse. Watching the world like a movie you've already seen. Now let me put on my other hat, the walking movie database that lives rent-free in my skull. Because sometimes, to keep from screaming, you have to sit back and say, okay, what scene is this from? Half the time, modern life feels like a rejected script from a dark comedy that even HBO thought was a little too on the nose. We're living in a mashup of The Godfather, Idiocracy, Brazil, The Matrix, They Live, and the worst seasons of any show that got lazy after season 3. You go into a corporate meeting and its office space meets the Hunger Games. HR talks about inclusion, while quietly drawing up the list of who's getting sacrificed to appease the quarterly gods. You stand there thinking, am I in a deleted scene? Where's the director's commentary explaining why this makes sense? Spoiler. It doesn't. When I watch a confused mid-level manager trying to enforce a policy that makes zero logical sense, I see Clerks meets Star Wars, a stormtrooper arguing over shift schedules while the Death Star is literally on fire. The guy is sweating over whether you filled out the form in triplicate while Rome, Babylon, and Silicon Valley all burn behind him in glorious 4K. The beauty of using cinema as a coping mechanism is that it gives you distance without apathy. It lets you see archetypes. The corporate executive becomes the senator in Gladiator, smiling while sharpening the dagger. The activist who never reads a book becomes the loud extra in the background of V for Vendetta, screaming slogans he doesn't understand. The influencer, obsessed with filters, is just a background character from Black Mirror, trapped in an episode that never ends. And you, if you're not careful, become the audience member who never leaves the theater. You keep buying popcorn while the world outside the cinema is being repossessed. Here's the twist. In this movie, you're supposed to be the main character. Not in the narcissistic Instagram way, but in the hero's journey sense. You're Frodo hauling the ring. You're Maximus trying to stay honorable in a rigged arena. You're Captain Picard trying to hold on to Starfleet ethics while the Federation quietly sells out to the Borg. Once you accept that real life is frequently dumber, darker, and more absurd than fiction, something shifts. You stop asking, how could they do this? And start saying, of course they did this, look at the script they're reading from. You stop being shocked and start being strategic. You start running your own internal commentary track. Ah yes, this is the scene where the incompetent administrator doubles down instead of admitting they were wrong. This is the montage where society ignores every warning sign and then acts surprised in Act 3. And because you can see the pattern, you can improvise. You can choose not to follow the script they wrote for you. You can step out of the NPC role and into the protagonist seat. The world is going full Bill and Ted while thinking it's Oppenheimer. That might scare some people. Me, I see opportunity. When everyone else is playing slapstick in a burning theater, the one guy who stays rational, disciplined, and spiritually grounded becomes the only sane voice in the director's cut. X. The family, the clan, and the old codes, last line of defense. Let's talk old world for a second. Not the sanitized, brochure version, the real stuff. Norse sagas, samurai scrolls, Spartan camps, Roman legions, Sicilian kitchens where the sauce simmers next to whispered strategies about keeping the family alive in a corrupt world. Every serious civilization had some version of this unspoken doctrine. Protect the family, guard the name, pass the code. Bushido wasn't just about sword technique, it was about loyalty, restraint, and duty unto death. Spartan training wasn't a CrossFit fad, it was a cultural insurance policy. Medieval chivalry, when it wasn't LARP-level fantasy, was an attempt to restrain raw power with honor. Even the mafia, twisted as it became, understood one core concept modern culture laughs at. The family is a fortress, not a Netflix login you share with whoever you're currently talking to. Compare that to 2025, where the family is treated like an optional side quest in an open-world game. People talk about found family because the original family was either destroyed, mocked, or bureaucratically sliced apart. The state wants to be the father. Corporate media wants to be the mother. Algorithms want to raise the kids. I am not romanticizing abusive clans or toxic patriarchy. I am saying this, without a trusted in-group, you are spiritually homeless. You become a permanent renter in the emotional Airbnb of life. In the Norse Eddas, a man without kin and hearth was a tragic figure, not a quirky lifestyle influencer. The ancient codes understood something our techno-feudalist overlords also understand, but for opposite reasons. Tight families are hard to control. A family with its own moral code, its own loyalty, its own economic mini-system becomes a rival power center, even if it's living in a two-bedroom apartment over a laundromat. Look at any totalitarian system, real or fictional, the first thing they attack is the family. They mock the old values. They bribe the children away from the parents. They reward betrayal and call it civic virtue. We've seen this movie before, in actual history and in a dozen stories from 1984 to Equilibrium. So what does the narrow path look like at the family level? It looks like this. You treat your home like a small embassy of a higher kingdom. You treat your dinner table like a council chamber. You treat your children not as accessories, but as future stewards of whatever fragments of truth you manage to salvage from this burning century. Maybe your living room doesn't look like a samurai dojo or a Viking longhouse, but the code can be the same. We tell the truth here. We protect each other here. We show up for each other here. We do not outsource our souls to screens. The modern world treats loyalty like a red flag. The old codes treated disloyalty like a capital offense. Somewhere between those extremes is sanity. And that sanity, that balanced code of honor and mercy, is going to have to be rebuilt family by family, table by table, handshake by handshake. 11. The Field Manual for the Narrow Path. A tactical briefing. Now we get tactical, because it's one thing to nod along in agreement and another to actually rewire your life in a world that's actively trying to keep you sedated. Think of this as the audiobook appendix that sounds like Sun Tzu, Epictetus, and a slightly sleep-deprived neighborhood watch captain sitting at the same diner booth at 2 a.m. First rule: you are not powerless. You are just outnumbered. There's a difference. Spartans didn't win every battle by having more troops. They won by training harder, thinking longer, and refusing to break formation when everyone else bolted for the exit. The art of war isn't about swinging the biggest sword, it's about shaping the battlefield so the enemy never gets a clean shot at you. So what does that look like in the age of push notifications and digital cattle prods? It means you control what enters your eyes and ears like a bouncer at the door of your own mind. Plato said the soul is shaped by its stories. The book of Proverbs says, "Guard your heart with all diligence, for from it flow the issues of life." The Quran speaks about the nafs, the self, that must be disciplined, not indulged. Same principle, different languages. If you let garbage in, don't be surprised when your interior monologue starts sounding like a reality show. Use the OODA loop like a spiritual martial art. When a crisis hits, personal or global, stop and observe. What is actually happening versus what you are being told is happening? Orient. What do you know from history, philosophy, scripture, and pattern recognition? Decide. What is the most honorable, rational move? Act. Do it calmly, without fanfare, like a professional. Predators, whether they wear hoodies or $1,000 suits, depend on people panicking. They depend on you skipping those middle steps and going straight from stimulus to reaction. When you slow it down, you break their script. You become that one character in the movie who doesn't fall for the obvious trap, and the whole tone of the scene changes. Second rule, your obsession is your engine, point it at the right target. If you're wired like me, perfectionist, detail-obsessed, forensic, unable to unsee patterns once they appear, you have two options. You either let that drive eat you alive in anxiety, or you harness it like a warhorse and ride it straight into deeper truth. The same trait that makes a man spiral on social media can, when redirected, make him a top-tier detective of reality. Read widely, but not randomly. Plato, Epictetus, Marcus Aurelius, the Gospels, the Book of Enoch, the Art of War, the Sagas, the Stoic Journals, the Norse codes, the Bushido texts. These are not just old books. They're firmware updates for the human operating system. You cross-reference them with Icke, Mars, Farrell, Sitchin, von Daniken, Dice, Estelin, Maxwell, Manly P. Hall, Walter Veith, Thomas Horn, Bramley, not to worship any single author, but to triangulate, to see which patterns repeat when you strip away ego and error. Third rule, pain is feedback, not a verdict. The narrow path hurts. You will be misunderstood. You will be mocked. You will lose things, jobs, friends, invitations to fake parties where the cheese is free but the spiritual price is ridiculous. Stoicism, Christianity, Islam, samurai ethics, chivalry, Spartan law, they all agreed on this. Suffering is not the end of the story, it's the training montage. It's Rocky chasing chickens. It's Neo puking after his first real fight. It's the part of the movie that feels longest when you're in it and shortest when you look back. So when you feel the friction, when you pay the price for not going along with the madness, don't say, something's wrong. Say, I must be getting closer to the truth. The resistance just went up. Fourth rule, refuse to be a predator or prey. Be the shepherd. Dark psychology wants you to choose one of two roles, exploiter or victim. Gaslighter or gaslit, narcissist or supply. That's the wide path binary. The narrow path adds a third archetype, the guardian. You are neither doormat nor tyrant. You are the one who sees what's happening and steps into the line of fire. Sometimes that's as simple as telling the truth when everyone else is lying. Sometimes it's quietly refusing to participate in a shakedown, disguised as culture. You don't have to save the whole world. Just don't contribute to its destruction. Protect your square footage of reality. Guard your family, your circle, your little patch of sanity like it's Helm's Deep and the orcs of nonsense are at the gate. Conclusion. The narrow path in a world built for the wide one. The last 100 years have been a slide into the abyss of comfort. We traded our birthright for a Netflix subscription. We traded our privacy for free email. We traded our souls for likes. But the game isn't over. The phonies want you depressed. They want you isolated. They want you to think that resistance is futile. They want you to believe you're just another extra in their movie, doomed to shuffle along in the background while they monologue about building back better from their fortified compounds. I say, resistance is essential. But not resistance with guns and riots. That's what they want, so they can crack down. No, I mean resistance of the spirit. The kind of resistance that starts when you say, no more lies in my house. No more cowardice in my mirror. No more surrender in my handshake. Stand up, tuck your shirt in, look the world in the eye. Tell the truth, even if your voice shakes. Treat every interaction like a diplomatic mission from the kingdom of reality. Be the guy who holds the door. Be the guy who fixes the flat tire for the stranger. Be the guy who refuses to lie, even when lying would be easier, faster, and better for your brand. The ancient astronauts might be watching, the Illuminati might be plotting, and the corporations might be looting, but they cannot touch a free soul who knows exactly who he is and who he ultimately answers to. Plato's cave, John's revelation, the warnings of prophets, the parables of Christ, the grim poetry of the sagas, the codes of warriors, the jokes of Carlin, the rants of Izard, they all converge on the same point. This place is rigged, but your response doesn't have to be. Be the glitch in the matrix. Be the outlier in their dataset. Be the character who breaks the fourth wall, looks straight into the camera of history, and says, I see you. I see the game, I choose the narrow path anyway. Zerga, in synthesis with the philosopher.